At exactly 9:32 on a Saturday morning, Jacob Miller stepped outside carrying a toolbox when he noticed a bright yellow legal notice attached to his front fence. At first, he assumed it was a community flyer, but the moment he started reading it, his face went pale. According to the HOA, Jacob was being fined $12,000 for unauthorized structural modifications and continued violation of community standards. Worse, the notice warned that legal action could begin within 10 days if payment wasn't received immediately. The crazy part was that the unauthorized structure they were threatening him over was a wheelchair ramp he built for his disabled father. And within weeks, the HOA president responsible for targeting Jacob would find herself under investigation after angry residents finally exposed what had really been happening inside the neighborhood. Jacob was a 42-year-old electrician living in a suburban Texas neighborhood with his father, Robert, a retired firefighter who suffered partial paralysis after a stroke. After Robert's condition worsened, Jacob spent weeks building a safe wheelchair ramp leading from the driveway to the front entrance. The ramp wasn't ugly or poorly built. In fact, several neighbors complimented how professional it looked. Jacob even painted it to match the house perfectly. Before construction began, he submitted paperwork requesting HOA approval like the rules required. Weeks passed without any response from the HOA office. Eventually, Robert's condition became urgent enough that Jacob built the ramp anyway, because carrying a wheelchair up the front steps daily had become dangerous. For almost 3 months, nobody complained. Then, HOA President Linda Carver moved into the neighborhood. Linda immediately became obsessed with enforcing rules. She constantly drove around searching for violations and posting long HOA warnings online. Residents quickly realized she enjoyed controlling people. She complained about trash bins, basketball hoops, parked work trucks, and even outdoor furniture colors. But the moment she noticed Jacob's wheelchair ramp, she completely fixated on it. One afternoon, Linda walked directly onto Jacob's driveway holding a clipboard and demanded to know who approved the ramp. Jacob calmly explained he had submitted paperwork months earlier, but never received a response. Linda immediately accused him of violating HOA policy. Jacob reminded her the ramp existed because his father physically couldn't enter the house safely otherwise. Instead of showing sympathy, Linda coldly replied that personal situations do not override community standards. Several neighbors overheard the conversation and later admitted they couldn't believe how heartless she sounded. 2 days later, Jacob received his first violation notice demanding immediate removal of the ramp, along with a $500 fine. Jacob contacted the HOA office again and even provided medical documentation proving his father's disability. Linda rejected everything. She claimed the ramp negatively impacted neighborhood appearance and threatened property values. Soon, more violations began arriving weekly. One claimed the railing color violated design standards. Another claimed the ramp dimensions exceeded community limits. The fines kept growing rapidly. Meanwhile, Robert blamed himself for everything. One evening, Jacob overheard his father quietly apologizing from the living room and suggesting they remove the ramp entirely so the HOA would stop harassing them. That conversation devastated Jacob, but Linda continued escalating the situation aggressively. Soon, HOA representatives began photographing Jacob's property almost daily. Neighbors noticed Linda stopping outside the house repeatedly, taking pictures from her car. Even delivery drivers started asking why the home had violation stickers posted on the mailbox. Things became ugly during the next HOA meeting. Jacob attended, hoping to finally resolve the issue publicly. Instead, Linda treated the meeting like a courtroom. She displayed enlarged photographs of the wheelchair ramp on a projector screen while claiming it created visual inconsistency within the community. Jacob calmly explained why the ramp existed and described his father's medical condition.
The room fell silent, listening to him, but Linda interrupted before he could finish and claimed the HOA could not make emotional exceptions. That statement immediately angered several homeowners. One resident actually walked out of the meeting in disgust. After the meeting, support for Jacob quietly spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors started visiting the house, offering encouragement. One family even started a petition demanding the HOA stop targeting disabled residents. Linda responded by becoming even more aggressive. Jacob suddenly received new violations unrelated to the ramp entirely. The HOA cited him for trash can visibility, holiday lighting violations, and driveway maintenance concerns. It became obvious Linda was personally targeting him. Desperate for help, Jacob hired an attorney named Denise Walker, who specialized in disability discrimination cases. Denise immediately noticed major legal problems with the HOA's actions. Under federal housing laws, HOAs were required to make reasonable accommodations for disabled residents. Denise formally requested all HOA communications related to Jacob's property. Linda refused repeatedly and accused Jacob of trying to bully the board legally. That refusal became a huge mistake. Denise soon discovered other residents had faced similar harassment from Linda. An elderly homeowner had been threatened over a medical handrail near her garage. Another disabled veteran received repeated complaints about a mobility scooter parked outside temporarily. Then an unexpected witness changed everything. A former HOA board member named Karen Lopez contacted Denise privately after resigning weeks earlier. Karen revealed that Linda regularly deleted HOA emails and pressured board members into approving selective fines against homeowners she personally disliked. Even worse, Karen possessed screenshots of private HOA messages where Linda mocked Jacob's father and referred to the wheelchair ramp as an eyesore dragging down the entire block. Denise immediately realized the HOA was facing serious discrimination lawsuits. Once Denise filed formal complaints with housing authorities, panic spread through the HOA board. Linda tried presenting herself publicly as misunderstood while claiming she only enforced community rules fairly, but residents no longer believed her. More homeowners started sharing stories about selective enforcement and intimidation. A local news station eventually contacted Jacob after hearing about the wheelchair ramp dispute online. At first, Jacob avoided interviews because he hated attention, but after seeing how many residents were suffering too, he agreed to tell his story publicly. The interview exploded online almost immediately. Thousands of people were furious watching an HOA threaten legal action against a disabled man over wheelchair access. Then investigators uncovered something even worse. Linda had approved thousands of dollars in HOA spending without proper board authorization. Financial records showed HOA funds being used for luxury dinners, hotel stays, and personal consulting expenses connected to Linda's friends. Residents became furious after learning their HOA fees helped fund the same harassment targeting homeowners unfairly. At the next HOA meeting, the clubhouse overflowed with angry residents holding printed copies of emails and financial documents. Linda attempted to start the meeting normally, but residents immediately interrupted her with questions about discrimination complaints and missing funds. One resident projected Linda's insulting messages on a wall. Another read financial records aloud, showing suspicious expenses connected to Linda personally. Then someone near the entrance announced that county investigators had arrived. Moments later, 2 investigators entered alongside sheriff's deputies carrying evidence boxes. The room went completely silent as investigators informed the board they were executing a formal records seizure connected to financial misconduct and discrimination allegations. Residents watched as deputies carried HOA computers and binders out of the building. Within weeks, multiple lawsuits were filed against the HOA and Linda personally. The board forced Linda to resign immediately. Jacob's fines were completely dismissed, and the HOA was legally required to approve the wheelchair ramp permanently. Several other residents also had violations erased after investigators uncovered patterns of selective enforcement. Eventually, the HOA agreed to major policy reforms involving disability accommodations and financial oversight. But for Jacob, the most emotional moment came months later during a neighborhood barbecue organized by residents supporting his family. For the first time in years, Robert confidently rolled himself down the wheelchair ramp while neighbors applauded around him. The same structure the HOA once called an eyesore had become a symbol of everything the community finally stood against.